We are on Shabbat, Perek Gimel Mishnah Aleph, the first Mishnah in the third chapter of Masechet Shabbat. This is actually one of the more famous parakim in Masechet Shabbat because it talks about the idea of covering a fire when you're cooking or leaving food on the flame from before Shabbat. Okay, and we're going to see actually that this refers to, let me see if I'll write it in here, two halachic terms that are important to be aware. One is called shehiyah, shehiyah, which is leaving food on the fire from before Shabbat. Hash'arat, ochel, ala ish, milifne. All both these are from before Shabbat. And then the other one is called hachzara, which is hachzarat, ochel, la'ish, b'shabbat atzmo. We're going to talk about each one in the Mishnah. Shehiyah, which is leaving food on an open flame from before Shabbat, and hachzara is from the returning food to a fire on Shabbat itself, i.e. taking it off of the fire, then putting it back. That's what Hachzara is all about. Let's learn the Mishnah. So the Mishnah, kira. If I have a kira, and a kira is a kind of enclosure and oven, stove, that they had in the times of the Mishnah. I'm going to read the first thing, and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'm going to read the Mishnah. Kira shehi sikua bikash ubigvava. Hisikua means you fueled it. You fueled the fire in the kira with either straw or gvava, which are eitzim dakim, small sticks like kash. Then the Mishnah says, Notnina le'at tavshil. Then you can place upon it a tavshil. And we're talking about from before Shabbat. Look at the Bartenura for a second. Notnina le'at tavshil, me erev Shabbat, lahashoto, from the word shehiyah, to leave it on Shabbat. I.e., what happened? I'm cooking my food, and I want hot food on Shabbat. They didn't have Shabbos clocks, they didn't have blech, they didn't have electricity. So they would set the fire up, and then put the food on the fire, and then let it go. And then Shabbat would enter, and then when the time came, they would then take the food off the fire. So it says the Mishnah, if you fueled your kira with kash and gvava, with sticks or straw, small sticks, then no tafshil, then you can place of the food on it. But begefet ve'itzim, if I used real branches, i.e. thicker branches, or gefet, what's gefet? Psolet shel zeitim b'shum shemin. They're the leftover shmutz after I squished out all the olives, and then they would use that for fuel, and it would obviously burn better than sticks or straw. Then the Mishnah says, Lo yitain ad yigrof. You should not put the food, you cannot place the food on the fire. You cannot do shehiyah until yigrof, means you scrape out, you scoop out the fire. O ad yitain ta'efer, or until you put afer, you put dirt over the coals. And that's a halachic term called grufa uktuma. It really means grufa uktu, or either grufa or ktuma, but in our terminology we call it grufa uktuma. So a fire is grufa uktuma, or it's not. What in the world is talking about? What is a kira? So it just so happens, I shared you, I have a website, I don't know if you've ever seen it, called spolder.net. And in spolder.net there's a section called Hilchos Shabbos, because I used to speak Ashkenazit. And in there, the first class, the source sheets, I talk about shehiyah, okay? And this is from the book 39 Malachot, which is a 4-volume set by Rabbi David Ribiat. This is a picture, according to Rabbi Ribiat, of the kira. Let's just make it a little bigger, okay? You can see here, it had area for 2 pots, and then obviously there was a fire under it. So let's just read what Rabbi Ribiat said. In the times of the Talmud, food was commonly cooked in what was called the kira. The kira was an oblong enclosure built on the ground and large enough to accommodate 2 large pots. A flame would be stoked at the floor of the kira and could be controlled through an opening at the side of the bottom. The pots were to be suspended at the rim of the kira with the pot handles on either side. With most of each pot recessed in the kira, and that's how you kept the flame hot. I don't think they used bricks. They probably used cheres, earthenware. If the food was not cooking quickly enough, the embers would have to be stirred or fanned to burn brighter. Remember, nowadays we have gas stoves or electric stoves. We can control the temperature of the fire easily. Then, if you've ever tried to cook with a fire, the fire is constantly going out. So you'd either have to add fuel, or you stoke the flames, and they would always try to stoke the flames as much as possible, because fuel is very hard to come by. Okay? The restriction of shehiyah precluded the use of a kira unless certain safeguards were instituted. To guard against inadvertently adjusting the flame, i.e. it must have been second nature, there was a stick or a stake right next to their kira, and the housewife, no matter whoever's cooking, which is always the housewife, she would just, intuitively, she would just, stake the coals. And Chazal saw this, and they said, if we allow you to leave food on an uncovered fire, then you've got a problem. because you're going to stake the coals. Shema, you're going to see this term back let's go back to the Mishnah for a second. The term, let's see what the Bartenura says, okay? You have to, let's read what the Mishnah says. Begeveru ve'etzim, if you have fueled it with 18, with wood, then lo yitain, you can't put food on the fire until yigrof. Yigrof means you scrape it out. You move the coal. So all you have left is the residual heat. O ad shitena te'efer. Or unless you cover it with dirt. Why? Then it's called grufa uktuma. Okay? Lechasotam ulitzanenam. That's to cover them and to cool them off. V'tama, the reason is gzeira shema yichatea b'agchalim. Very important terminology. There's a gzeira, maybe you will stoke the coals on Shabbat. In order to make it, in order to increase the speed at which the food will cook. So we'll go back to our sheets, okay? This is the kira, and the Chazal said you have to cover this, either you have to remove the fire, and whatever residual heat is there, or you have to cover it with dirt. Because then you're going to remember, you're not going to be mechateh ba'gechalim, removal of the coals, or covering the flame, and weakening its intensity. That's what grufa and ketuma is all about. And that's what the Mishnah says. Let's read it again. Kira, if it's just straws and sticks, okay, it's not going to last very long. Then you can do shihya. That's a simple explanation of the Mishnah. But begever uveitzim, if you're using stronger fuel that's going to have a stronger fire, lo yitenat shigrof, you cannot place the food and do shihya until you do grufa, or shiten ta'ifer, or you do ketumat. You cover the fire in such a way that a person won't be mechateh ba'gchalim. We'll continue in the Mishnah. There's a ton to talk about. You can give endless shiurim. There are endless shiurim in the internet about this issue. But we're learning Mishnah Yomit, so I'm going to move on. Beit Shammai Omrim. Beit Shammai says, what are we referring to? Chamin avalo tafshil. Okay? Only hot water, ma'im chamin, but it's not referring to a tafshil. I.e., when the Mishnah said you can leave food on the kira, it's not food, it's just hot water. Because I'm not worried about mechateh b'gechalim. But if it's a tafshil, no way. Ubeit Hillel Omrim. Beit Hillel says, chamin v'tafshil. You can do it both for a chamin, of course hot water, but even if there's a tafshil. I just want to bring to you, it's important to read what the Bartenura says. What tafshil are you allowed to use? He says, Davka tafshil, we're only talking about a tafshil that was shelo bashal kortzoko. It's not fully cooked. Or, afilu bashal kortzoko, umitstamek v'yafelo. This is a halachic term that's very important. Mistamek v'yafelo means it stews, and that's good. So if I have chalent, it's considered mistamek v'yafelo. Why? Because the longer it cooks, the more tasty it is. Soup is very often mistamek v'yafelo. The longer it cooks, the more tasty it is. And therefore, in the case of mistamek v'yafelo, gazrinan shema yechateh. We're afraid you're going to stoke the coals to make it cook better. But if it's not cooked at all, or bashel is cooked, fully cooked, umitstamek v'ralo, let's say the more that it cooks, it's going to dry out. I have chicken on there. And the longer the food cooks, I'm not going to stoke the coals because the chicken's already fully cooked. It's going to get drier. Then mutar la'ashoto al gabe kira. Then you can do shihya on the kira because we're not afraid of shami yechateh. Last machloket. Beit Shammai omrim notlin aval malo machzirim. Beit Shammai says notlin. You're allowed to take the food off the fire. Once you left the food on beheter, the hot water, you can take it off. Avalo machzirin. You're not allowed to put it back on. Ubeit Hillel omrim. Beit Hillel says af machzirin. No, if you took it off, then under certain circumstances, you can put it back on. What are the circumstances? Okay? The Bartenura brings down the Gemara that says the following. You're allowed to be machzir, bein chamin, bein tafshil. Because remember, Hillel says, both hot water and a tafshil. Yicholim lachzir achar netalan. You can do hachzara. You can do hachzara even after you took it off the fire. When? In what circumstance did Beit Hillel permit it? The following circumstances. Odan biyado. You're still holding on to it. This is based on the Gemara. You didn't put it down. Okay? And you have to have da'at lehachzir. And it has to still be fully hot. Etc., etc., etc. In all those situations, and this is not our halacha class, that's when Beit Hillel says you're allowed to return, you're allowed to do hachzara. So let's look back. A little chart of our Mishnah. Is the permission of Gufa and Ketuma for water or tafshil? Beit Shammai says water. Beit Hillel says chamin and tafshil. And it's only referring to a tafshil that's not fully cooked and mistamek v'yafelo. That's where the prohibition applies. But if it's fully cooked, then you can do it no matter what. Notlim o shegam machzirin, i.e. shihya or also achzara. Beit Shammai says the only permission is shihya. But notlin o Beit Hillel says notlin u machzirin. So essentially, Beit Shammai says the only thing you're allowed to do, if you think about another chart, you're only allowed to do hot water and you're only allowed to leave it on. But hachzara of of chamin, of tafshil, for sure not according to Beit Shammai, and even shihiyah of tafshil, you're not allowed to at all. We'll stop here. We've gone on long enough. If you have any comments or questions, as always, email me at rspolter@gmail.com. I want to emphasize, this is not a halachic shiur. It's not in the halacha. And we'll just add the last point, the point of the use of the kira. This would lead to, I wonder if I have more, this is direct, how should we say, it's a direct grandfather of the blech. This is called gufa uketuma, when you cover the flames on the fire. At least that's the way we grew up with the blech. Today we use an electric hot plate. Have a great day.